Chapter 1: The Arrival. The bustling spaceport of Arcturus 7 buzzed with the cacophony of alien traders, intergalactic travelers, and the constant hum of technology. Amidst the chaos, a small crowd gathered around the loading bay where a sleek, black transport ship was just beginning its descent. A figure stood out in the throng, a woman barely taller than most humans, her dark hair cut sharply to her shoulders. She wore a simple jumpsuit that blended into the crowd, but her eyes flicked with intensity and purpose. A sudden burst of light sliced through the sky as the transport ship's landing thrusters activated, sending a tremor through the concrete floor below. The ship touched down with a gentle thud, its ramp extending outward to reveal a cluster of armored soldiers descending in impeccable formation. Stern-faced humans, sleek reptilian beings, and towering figures with glistening scales. "Clear the area," a voice boomed over the intercom, and the crowd scattered with hurried footsteps. The woman remained rooted in place, her eyes narrowing as she observed the procession. The soldiers didn't seem to notice her. They moved with mechanical precision toward a waiting hovercraft already filling up with high-ranking officials. "Mom, this area is restricted." A security guard approached her, his hand signaling for her to back away from the landing site. "Just passing through," she replied tersely, sidestepping him and moving closer to where the hovercraft waited. She took a deep breath, mentally preparing herself for what was to come. A door opened on the hovercraft's side, revealing an imposing figure, a tall, muscular, with a visage that suggested both authority and menace. He wore a regal cloak adorned with the insignia of the Empire, and beside him stood his second-in-command, a dragon-like humanoid with scales shimmering like polished obsidian. "Captain," the security guard addressed them with a nod. This woman insisted on staying here despite clear warnings. The figure Commander Kalen stepped forward, his eyes sweeping over the woman with a discerning gaze. She met his stare without flinching, her expression neutral. He tilted his head slightly, intrigued by this defiance. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice resonating with power and authority. "A traveler," she answered curtly. "I was here first." Kalen's eyes narrowed, the muscles in his jaw tightening. He took a step closer to her, his presence overwhelming but also unsettlingly magnetic. "You defy our orders?" "I do," she responded firmly, tilting her chin up slightly. "Unacceptable," Kalen replied, his voice dropping an octave lower. "Eliminate her." A squad of soldiers stepped forward, their weapons at the ready. The woman's reaction was swift. She didn't flinch, but instead reached into her jacket, pulling out a small, nondescript device. Before anyone could react, she activated it, and suddenly, a shimmering energy field enveloped her, nullifying the soldiers' weapons and freezing them in place. Kalen's eyes widened momentarily before narrowing to slits. "Who are you really?" he growled, trying to maintain his composure. "Someone who doesn't take threats lightly," she said coolly. "Now step back." With a silent nod from Kalen, the soldiers hesitated, their weapons dropping to their sides as they were overridden by her device. The dragon, like second-in-command, stepped forward, his scales gleaming in the artificial light. "You are one of them," he hissed, his voice a low rumble. "No human can resist us like that." "I'm not one of your soldiers," she countered, her voice unwavering. "But I can handle your threats." Kalen's gaze shifted to the hovercraft's doors, where more figures were emerging, senior officers and advisors, all dressed in the garb of high-ranking officials. They had clearly come to observe the confrontation. "What is going on here?" one of the officials demanded, stepping into the light. "An unknown woman defied our order," Kalen explained, his voice still tinged with suspicion. "She has some kind of tech that's interfering with our soldiers' abilities." The official's eyes flicked to the woman, then back to Kalen. "Bring her aboard and secure her. We'll deal with her later." Kalen nodded, turning to the woman. "You're coming with us," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "I don't think so," she replied, fingers sliding into a pocket for another device. This one was slightly larger and seemed more potent. She pointed it directly at Kalen, her eyes cold and calculating. "Move another inch, and I'll ensure you regret it," she warned, her voice crisp and deadly serious. Kalen's grip on his weapon tightened, but he didn't advance. The tension in the air was palpable. All eyes were on her. "You're playing a dangerous game," Kalen said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "We don't mess with unknown variables." "I'm not a variable," she countered, her voice steady. "I'm here to stop you." Before anyone could react, a series of explosions seek at the spaceport. The hovercraft shuddered violently as debris from outside flew through the open ramp. Amidst the chaos, the woman took the opportunity to dash past the stunned soldiers, her movement fluid and precise. Kalen shouted orders into his communicator as the chaos intensified around them. "Seal the area. We have an intruder." The woman's form melded seamlessly with the shadows as she slipped away from the hovercraft, disappearing into the labyrinthine corridors of Arcturus 7. "Find her," Kalen bellowed, his face contorting with anger and frustration. But it was too late. She was gone. As the crowd began to regroup and the soldiers moved to secure the area, Kalen turned to his second-in-command. "'Tis not just another traveler," he said grimly. "We need to find out who she is." The dragon-like figure nodded, scales gleaming with determination. "Agreed." With that, they entered the hovercraft, leaving behind a spaceport in disarray and a mystery that was only beginning to unfold. Outside, amidst the rubble and chaos, the woman paused briefly, her eyes scanning the perimeter before she slipped into the shadows once more, blending in with the night. Her mission was far from over. The alien empire wasn't ready for what was coming next. The stars themselves seemed to whisper of unseen dangers, their silent glow a warning that fell on deaf ears. The High Council, long accustomed to the dominance of their technology and intellect over the cosmos, dismissed the prophetic murmurs as nothing more than cosmic static, mere noise in the vastness of space. But within the hidden corners of the Empire's vast networks, there was a different kind of awareness stirring. A young officer named Illyra had stumbled upon an old text buried deep within the digital archives, a relic from a time when the Empire first began to explore the stars. In those ancient documents, she found tales of an entity known only as the Weaver, a being that could manipulate reality itself, and whose very existence hinted at the fabric of the universe being far more intricate than the Empire's scientists had ever imagined. Illyra knew the risks of spreading such information, but she couldn't shake the feeling that this knowledge was crucial. She began to share her findings in clandestine meetings with a small group of like-minded individuals scattered across the galactic frontier. These were not the Empire's elite, but rather those who had fallen out of favor or sought to challenge the status quo. Their discussions were haunted by the shadow of the Weaver, a figure both feared and revered in their whispered conversations. As the days turned into weeks, strange occurrences began to plague the Empire. Spacecraft failed for no apparent reason, communication lines crackled with static-filled messages from sectors that had long been abandoned, and mysterious symbols started appearing on the walls of ancient ruins scattered throughout the galaxy. These symbols, when decoded by Illyra's group, revealed a map leading to a star system none had thought possible to reach. The High Council remained oblivious, their focus still on expanding their territories and strengthening their hold over the known universe. But as they pressed forward with expansionist policies, pushing against the boundaries of what was once believed impossible, something began to shift in the fabric of reality itself. Star maps changed, old routes suddenly leading nowhere, and new, uncharted pathways appeared, paths that seemed to point directly towards the system revealed by Illyra's group. Fearing a catastrophic discovery by the wrong hands, Illyra and her team hurriedly set out on a mission to find the source of these anomalies. They journeyed through stars that had never been charted before, their ships guided by the cryptic symbols left behind in ancient texts. Each new sector they explored brought them closer to the truth, yet also deeper into unknown dangers. The void between the stars became alive with whispers of an ancient presence, a dormant force now stirring from its long slumber. Illyra's crew encountered strange phenomena, a star that could be seen shifting into multiple positions at once, planets that defied the laws of physics as they orbited their suns, and dark zones where even thought itself was muffled by an unseen wall. As they drew nearer to their destination, Illyra felt a growing sense of dread. The system ahead was shrouded in an impenetrable veil of cosmic dust, its secrets hidden behind a barrier that seemed impervious to all technology. Yet the map led them there, and Illyra couldn't ignore what felt like a desperate call from another universe. With no other options, they prepared for a direct approach. As their ship pierced through the veil, time itself seemed to stretch and warp around them. Colors blurred, reality shifted and contorted, and the crew was forced to confront an unsettling truth about the nature of our existence. They had crossed into a realm where the Weaver's influence was palpable, a domain where the lines between space and time, matter and consciousness, were blurred beyond recognition. Here, Illyra and her companions encountered beings that defied comprehension, entities composed of raw thought patterns and cosmic energy, each embodying aspects of the universe. They learned that the Weaver was not just a single entity, but rather a collective awareness, a consciousness spread across the fabric of reality itself. It had watched silently from beyond the boundaries of conventional space-time, waiting for those who would seek it out. Illyra's mission took on a new purpose as she and her team realized they were the ones who needed to confront the ancient truths left behind by the Weaver. Their journey was not just about uncovering secrets, but understanding their place in a universe far more complex and interconnected than they had ever imagined. The High Council might have dismissed the warnings, but Illyra's group now understood the gravity of what lay ahead. Their discovery threatened to unravel the very fabric of the Empire's control over the known universe, for it hinted at a reality far beyond the technological and intellectual might that had long sustained their dominance. As they ventured deeper into this realm of cosmic mystery, the crew prepared themselves not just for the unknown, but for the possibility that everything they thought they knew about existence was merely a shadow of a greater truth. In this pivotal moment, Illyra faced a choice zone that would not only determine the fate of her mission, but potentially redefine the future of the entire alien empire. Chapter 6: The Choice. As the lights flickered and shadows danced across the walls of the abandoned facility, Illyra found herself standing alone in a small control room littered with outdated technology. Her heart pounded in her chest, each beat echoing the urgency of the mission she had been tasked with. She was here to retrieve an artifact that could either save or destroy the alien empire. The pressure was immense. In front of her was a sleek, metallic box embedded into the floor, device from the ancient era of the civilization that once thrived here. It hummed softly, radiating an energy that felt both familiar and terrifying. Illyra knew that inside this box lay the key to everything they sought, a relic of immense power and danger. But there was a problem. She wasn't alone. From behind her, a voice echoed, heavy with a mix of command and resignation. "Illyra," it called out, "it's time." She turned slowly, meeting the gaze of Leary, a formidable dragon, woman from a rival faction within the alien empire. Leary's presence was as much a threat as it was an ally. They had fought side by side before, but always with underlying tensions. Leary stepped into the dim light, her scales shimmering in hues of blue and silver. "We need this," she said, not breaking eye contact. "The future of our people depends on it." Illyra nodded, though the action felt heavy and reluctant. "I know," she replied, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. "But we have to be careful." Leary, his eyes narrowed slightly. "There's no time for caution, Illyra. We've come too far." The tension between them was palpable, a delicate balance of mutual trust and latent hostility. Illyra knew Leary would do what was necessary to secure their faction's supremacy, even if it meant betraying her own kind. This mission was no exception. "Is the device ready?" Illyra asked, trying not to sound too eager or suspicious. Leary nodded towards a small group of technicians huddled around a complex array of instruments beside them. "They've been working on it non-stop since we arrived." Illyra approached the cluster of engineers and peered over their shoulders, her heart clenching at the intricate wiring and delicate machinery they handled with intense concentration. The technology, though alien in origin, was eerily familiar to her, something she had encountered back home during the early days of her training. "This is the same kind of technology used to control the interdimensional portal," Illyra mused aloud, her thoughts racing. "If this box contains the key to opening it," Leary, his eyes flicked towards her briefly before returning to the scene. "Yes, but more importantly, it holds secrets that could rewrite our history." Illyra nodded, absorbing the implications. She knew that the contents of this box weren't just a relic, but a potential weapon, a device that could shift the balance of power across all dimensions. "All right," Illyra said, her voice firm and resolute despite the weight of her thoughts. "Let's do it." They stepped closer to the metallic box, Leary's hand hovering over a control panel as she initiated the extraction sequence. Sparks flew as circuits were triggered and mechanisms clicked into place, filling the room with a tense energy. Illyra watched closely, analyzing every move Leary made. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more at play here than they both understood or had admitted to themselves. It was evident in Leary's hesitance and the shadow of doubt that lingered in her eyes. Suddenly, alarms blared, cutting through their concentration. "What's happening?" Illyra shouted over the noise. Leary's expression hardened. "Security breach," she growled under her breath. "They've sent a retrieval team." Illyra's blood ran cold. The last thing they needed was another faction attempting to secure this relic for themselves. They would face overwhelming odds if caught now. "We have to get this box out of here," Illyra ordered, grabbing hold of the metallic casing and trying to lift it from the embedded floor. It didn't budge. Leary, noticing her struggle, stepped in with unspoken understanding. She placed her hands over Illyra's, and together they managed to pry the heavy device free, its energy flaring up as it separated from its anchor point. With the box now free, Leary led the way through narrow corridors and dark passageways, evading patrols and traps set by unknown enemies. The tension grew with each step, the weight of the relic adding pressure to their mission and deepening their resolve. Each heartbeat seemed to amplify the risks they faced, each breath a silent prayer for survival. They moved swiftly but cautiously, the urgency of their task pulling them forward, even as their hearts screamed at them to retreat. The air grew colder, the shadows darker, and the sense of being watched more pressing with every passing moment. Chapter 7: Shadows and Betrayal. As Illyra and Leary navigated through the labyrinthine corridors, the atmosphere grew oppressive. Each breath seemed to carry an echo of danger, and the dim lighting cast long shadows that danced ominously around them. The box they carried felt like a tangible threat, its hum growing louder with every step they took. They reached a junction where three paths diverged. Leary paused, her eyes narrowing as she scanned the area. "This way," she motioned towards the right corridor, her voice barely above a whisper. But before they could proceed, a group of dark figures materialized in front of them, their faces obscured by masks. They stepped forward with menacing grace, blocking their path. Illyra felt the cold grip of fear clutch at her heart. These were not ordinary soldiers. Their movements were too precise, too coordinated. "Drop the box," one of them ordered, his voice hollow and threatening. Lyria's eyes flickered to Illyra, a silent message passing between them. Trust was a fragile thing when lives were on the line. "We have orders, Lyria," replied coolly. The masked figure stepped closer, his gaze unyielding. "Our superiors want this artifact, and we won't hesitate to take it." Lyria hesitated for a moment, her hand tightening over the box. Illyra could see the strain in her posture, the tension between loyalty and necessity. There was no room for compromise here. "Illyra," Lyria whispered urgently, "prepare for an extraction." They needed to act quickly. Illyra nodded, pulling out her weapon, a sleek, energy-infused blade that hummed with power. She activated it, feeling the rush of adrenaline as she prepared to fight their way through. The masked figures readied their weapons too, but before they could attack, a sudden explosion rocked the facility. The ground beneath them shook violently, and debris rained down from the ceiling. Illyra barely had time to react before a wave of confusion and chaos erupted around them. In the midst of the commotion, Illyra saw an opportunity, a shadowy figure darting towards them, her movements swift and purposeful. It was Zira, a member of Lyria's faction, who seemed to materialize from the darkness itself. "Illyra, we need to leave," Zira called out urgently, her voice cutting through the chaos. Lyria quickly assessed the situation, her face a mask of intense focus. "Move now," she commanded, leading the way as they surged forward through the narrow passages. The explosion had created an opening in their defenses, and they didn't have much time to capitalize on it. They navigated through a series of twists and turns, each corridor more treacherous than the last. The air grew colder, the shadows denser, and the sense of impending doom intensified with every step. Illyra's heart pounded in her chest, a mix of fear and determination fueling her forward. But just as they reached what seemed to be an exit, a figure stepped out of the shadows. Lyria and the leader of their faction. His eyes met Illyra's briefly before fixing on Lyria. "Lyria," Kin addressed sternly, his voice dripping with authority. "You know what needs to be done." Lyria's expression hardened as she faced him, the box still firmly in her grasp. "We've already secured the artifact," she replied, her tone cold and defiant. "Now we just need to get out." Kin's eyes narrowed, a flash of anger crossing his face. He raised a hand, and several guards moved to flank Lyria. The tension between them was palpable, a delicate dance of loyalty and rebellion. "Traitors will not be tolerated," Kin said with grim finality. "Hand over the artifact." Lyria's gaze flickered to Illyra, a plea mixed with warning in her eyes. They were running out of options. "I won't let you take this, Lyria," declared, her voice steady but resolute. Kin's eyes flashed with a dangerous intensity. "Then I'm afraid you leave us no choice." Before either could react, Kin's hand shot forward, and the air shimmered around him as he deployed an energy field that enveloped Lyria and Illyra. The box glowed brightly within its confines, intensifying the energy field until it became a barrier. Illyra's heart raced as she tried to break free, but the energy was too strong. She turned to face Kin, her eyes narrowing with determination. "I won't let you take it," she said fiercely, mirroring Lyria's words. Kin's gaze softened slightly, a hint of regret in his eyes. "Illyra, this isn't just about the artifact," he said gently. "It's about the future of our people." Illyra's breath hitched as she felt the weight of his words. She knew what was at stake, but the cost of betrayal was too high. Trust had been a fragile bond in their world, and breaking it would have dire consequences. "Lyria," Kin addressed, his tone softer now, Give me the box. Lyria's eyes flickered between Alara and Kin, her grip on the artifact tightening. We've come this far, she said stubbornly. Kin sighed, his expression weary. Put it down, Lyria. For our people. For a moment, silence hung heavy between them. The weight of their decision pressed down on all of them: the future, the mission, and the fragile bonds that held them together. Fine, Lyria finally conceded, her voice laced with sorrow and frustration as she carefully placed the box on the ground. As soon as it was released from her grip, Kin's energy field dissipated, leaving them all standing in the aftermath of their decision. Lyria's face betrayed a mix of pain and resignation, her eyes meeting Alara's one last time before turning away. Well, regroup, she said to Kin, her voice hollow. Kin nodded solemnly. Be prepared for the next phase. As they turned to leave, Alara stood there, the weight of what just transpired sinking in. She felt a pang in her chest, a mixture of disappointment and anger at the betrayal. But she also felt the urgency of their mission and the importance of maintaining unity. She picked up the box, feeling its energy hum beneath her fingers. This wasn't just about an artifact, it was about the future they were trying to shape. But the cost had been too high, too many sacrifices and betrayals in a fragile alliance. Alara's mind raced as she followed them out of the facility, the artifact now secure, but the tension still thick in the air. The path ahead was fraught with danger and uncertainty, but she knew they couldn't afford to falter. Every step brought them closer to a future where everything would be decided, and the choices they made here would define that future. Chapter 8: Shadows and Secrets. Exiting the facility proved more challenging than expected. As Alara and Lyria moved through the narrow corridors, the tension between them lingered like an unspoken curse. Each step seemed to carry the weight of recent betrayals and the fragile trust that had been tested. Alara, Lyria said quietly, breaking the uneasy silence. We can't let Kin control everything. This artifact is too important. Alara nodded, her expression grim. She knew Lyria's concerns were valid, but she also understood the complexity of their situation. I know, she replied, but we have to act carefully. If we defy him now, our faction risks a full-blown war. Lyria's gaze hardened momentarily before softening. We can't afford that, she conceded, her voice barely above a whisper. But we need to ensure the box isn't used against us. They reached an abandoned hangar where a small shuttle was ready for departure. The box was carefully secured within, its energy pulsing through the craft, even as the engines roared to life. As they prepared to leave, Kin's voice echoed over the intercom. Faction L-13, your mission is to deliver this artifact directly to our headquarters. Alara and Lyria exchanged a glance, both sensing the underlying pressure in his words. We won't let him misuse it, Alara whispered fervently. Lyria nodded, her eyes filled with determination. Agreed. We'll have to find a way to secure the box properly before it falls into the wrong hands. They launched into space, the stars twinkling around them like distant dreams. As they traveled through the void, Alara's thoughts raced, piecing together fragments of information that hinted at greater truths. There was more to this mission than anyone had let on, and she couldn't shake the feeling that their actions were being observed by unseen entities. Suddenly, an anomaly appeared ahead, a swirling vortex of light and darkness, its presence both menacing and mesmerizing. The ship's sensors picked up unusual energy readings, triggering alarms throughout the vessel. Lyria, Alara said urgently, pointing towards the anomaly. We need to investigate. Lyria's eyes narrowed in focus. Kin won't be happy about this deviation from our path. Alara nodded, her resolve unwavering. But we can't ignore something like this. It might hold crucial information. They maneuvered closer to the anomaly, the ship trembling as it approached the swirling portal. The energy inside was volatile and chaotic, yet Alara felt a strange pull towards it, a sense of inevitability. As they entered the anomaly, time seemed to distort around them. The stars twisted into kaleidoscopic patterns, and the ship shuddered violently. When the tremors subsided, they found themselves in an entirely different dimension, an ancient, forgotten realm bathed in an eerie luminescence. In this otherworldly space, they encountered a figure cloaked in shadows, a mysterious entity with eyes that glowed like stars. It moved towards them with an unsettling grace, and Illyria could feel the box pulsing in sync with its approach. "Seeker," the shadowy figure said, its voice echoing across the void, "the truth lies within the artifact." Illyria's heart raced as she realized this wasn't just a mission, it was part of a grander, more perilous scheme that had been unfolding for generations. The box held secrets far beyond their faction's ambitions. "We need to understand its true purpose," Leary stated resolutely. The shadowy figure nodded, and Illyria felt an unseen force guiding her towards the box. She reached into it, and as her hand touched the artifact, a flood of visions erupted in her mind, ancient prophecies, lost knowledge, and dire warnings about impending destruction. She gasped as the visions subsided, her head reeling from the overload of information. "This can't be," she murmured, shaking her head in disbelief. Lyria's eyes widened in understanding. "Illyria, what did you see?" Illyria took a deep breath, her voice trembling with urgency. "The artifact isn't just a weapon. It holds the key to a hidden world, a realm of untold power and danger." They emerged from the anomaly, the stars outside their ship flickering as if disturbed by their passage. Illyria knew they had to act quickly to prevent the chaos from escalating, but the knowledge they now possessed was both a blessing and a curse. Back in the ship, Lyria's face was etched with determination. "We can't let anyone else know about this," she said firmly. "Not until we understand fully." Illyria nodded, her mind racing with plans. "Agreed, but we have to act before Kin does something irreversible." They returned to their home planet, the artifact secured, but their minds consumed by the revelations and dangers ahead. The path forward was fraught with peril, but it also held the potential for redemption and salvation. They had uncovered a truth that could change everything, and now they were one step closer to facing the ultimate challenge. Chapter 9: Shadows of the Past. Upon returning to their home planet, Illyria and Leary found the atmosphere heavy with tension. Reports of the anomaly, encounter, and the strange visions Illyria experienced spread through the ranks like wildfire. But with Kin in command, the full truth remained hidden from most, confined to whispers and hushed conversations. Illyria met with a small group of trusted allies in a secluded room, their faces tense and worried. Among them was Vera, a skilled engineer known for her resourcefulness, and Ari, a diplomat who had always advocated for diplomacy over force. "Illyria, Ari," he began, her voice laden with concern. "What we witnessed mustn't fall into the wrong hands." Vera nodded in agreement. The anomaly was too significant to ignore. "There's more at play here." Illyria took a deep breath, her mind racing as she pieced together fragments of information from their journey. "We need to delve deeper," she said resolutely. "There are hidden truths about the artifact that could upend everything we know." The group exchanged glances, their eyes reflecting shared fears and uncertainties. They knew they were walking a tightrope between duty and rebellion. "We have to be careful, Ari," they warned. "If Kin suspects dissent, he'll crush us before we can act." Illyria's gaze hardened. "Then we need to find a way to protect the truth." Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden tremor, causing objects in the room to rattle and dust to fall from the ceiling. Panic surged through them as they realized something far more ominous than usual was unfolding. "Stay alert," Illyria instructed urgently, her heart pounding with dread. "We might need to act fast." They dispersed, each taking up positions to monitor developments closely. But as night fell, a series of unexpected events began to unfold, throwing the already fragile order into further disarray. Chapter 10: The Unveiling. As night descended upon the planet, A sudden and unexplained blackout plunged the city into darkness. Panic spread like wildfire through the streets as citizens scrambled for safety and light, their voices rising in alarm. Illyra and Lyria rushed to the command center, where chaos reigned. Technicians scrambled to restore power, their faces strained with effort and fear. Kin stood at the heart of it all, his expression cold and unyielding. "We have an intruder," one of the guards reported urgently, his voice trembling. "They've breached our main defenses." Illyra's blood ran cold. The artifact was in this building, and any unauthorized access could be catastrophic. She turned to Lyria, her eyes communicating a silent plea for help. "Prepare for a full lockdown," Kin ordered tersely. "Deploy every available unit." Lyria nodded sharply, her hand moving to the comm link at her ear as she relayed orders to their faction's security forces. But Illyra could see the conflict in her eyes, loyalty to their cause versus the need to protect the artifact from those who would misuse it. Suddenly, the air shimmered with an energy field, and a group of figures materialized in front of them, a mix of masked individuals and unknown entities. Their leader stepped forward, his gaze piercing through the darkness. Lyria, he addressed coolly, "we've been waiting for this moment." Lyria's hand tightened on her weapon as she turned to face them, her eyes narrowing in warning. "Who are you?" The leader's lips curled into a sinister smile. "We are the guardians of the Nexus," he replied calmly, "and we know what this artifact truly represents." Illyra felt a chill run down her spine as the leader's words sank in. This wasn't a simple intruder threat, it was a deliberate move to uncover the truth behind the artifact. "We need to secure the box immediately," Illyra urged, her voice steady but urgent. "We can't let it fall into the wrong hands." Lyria nodded sharply, her eyes flickering between Illyra and the Guardians. "Deploy the containment field," she instructed, activating a series of intricate controls embedded within the walls. The air shimmered as an energy barrier enveloped the room, sealing off any immediate threats. But Illyra's senses were still on high alert. Guardians had come too close to their secret for it to be mere coincidence. "Illyra," Lyria said urgently, pulling her aside, "we need to go deeper. There's more at play here." Together, they navigated through the corridors, each step revealing new layers of complexity. They reached a hidden chamber where the artifact was stored within a secure containment unit. The box glowed faintly, pulsating with energy that seemed to draw them closer. "Activate the secondary defenses," Lyria ordered, her fingers moving deftly over control panels. The room filled with an eerie hum as additional security measures engaged, sealing off all access points. But Illyra's mind was already racing ahead, piecing together fragments of information and visions from their journey through the anomaly. "Lyria," she said urgently, "we can't let this artifact fall into anyone else's hands." Lyria's eyes met hers with a mix of understanding and determination. "We need to ensure it's safeguarded properly," she agreed. As they prepared to leave, the Guardians reappeared at the entrance of the chamber, their leader stepping forward with an unwavering gaze. "Hand over the artifact," he demanded firmly. Illyra's heart raced as she weighed her options. This wasn't just about securing the box anymore, it was about uncovering the true purpose. Illyra's heart raced as she weighed her options. The room around her seemed to blur, the shadows deepening like a relentless tide swallowing up any light that dared to persist. She could feel the weight of her decision pressing down on her, like an unseen hand closing in. She thought of his eyes, those warm, golden orbs that seemed to see into the very depths of her soul. Thoughts of his hands, those rough, calloused fingers that still retained the delicate touch of a love accursed her memory, making her shiver. She could almost feel his breath on her skin again, a light caress that stirred something deep within her, something primal and unyielding. "Illyra," he had whispered once, as if it was the most sacred word he knew, "this is our last chance to do this right." A wave of longing crashed through her. She could turn back now. She could leave him, find some other path to escape, to freedom. Her mind, ever relentless, kept pulling at the memories that she had locked away. The way he had held her after their first fight, how his words had shaken her to her core, and yet how he had managed to reassure her, to lift her from the dark depths of despair. Those moments felt more precious than any jewel, more valuable than 1,000 stars. But freedom was within her grasp, no freedom with no such constraints, no one to answer to, no heartstrings to tug at and pull her back from the brink. This thought brought a mixture of relief and dread. His hand had brushed hers as he handed over the last of his credits. There was a hint of sorrow in his eyes, a flicker of regret for what could have been, but also an acceptance that this was inevitable. "I don't want to lose you," he had said, "but I know it's better this way." "Alara," she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible over the roaring of her own heartbeat. She took a deep breath, and in that moment, she knew exactly what she was going to do, and there was no turning back now. With a resolve that felt both alien and deeply human, Alara approached his quarters. As she neared, she could hear his voice through the door, his deep, resonant tones filled with both sorrow and understanding. It was as if he sensed her presence when she entered. His gaze met hers without hesitation. "Alara," he said again, this time with a mix of emotions that left her breathless. She stepped closer, their eyes locked in an unbreakable bond. Every inch of her wanted to hold him tight, to never let go, but her resolve was set. She needed clarity, honest truth about herself, and what she could bear to live with. "I can't," she began, her voice cracking a little as she spoke the words that tore at her soul. "I can't leave this way." A flicker of hope sparked in his eyes, followed quickly by wariness. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, the words forming and unforming on her lips. Then she took another step forward, her hand reaching out, as if to touch him, but then falling away. This was harder than she had ever imagined. "I mean, I need to do this differently. I want to escape on your back. Not like this." Confusion washed over his features, mixed with a deep longing. "Alara, you have to know," she cut in gently, placing her fingers against his lips to silence him. The contact was brief, but it sent electric sparks through them both. "I can't let this end without trying one more time." She saw the storm brewing in his eyes, the desperation and sorrow intertwining with something else, something that mirrored the chaos within her heart. His breath caught as she moved closer, the air thickening with a sense of impending change. Her hand, trembling slightly, rose to trace the line of his jaw, her thumb brushing against his cheekbone. He closed his eyes at the touch, and for a moment, she thought he would pull away. Instead, he leaned into her hand, seeking comfort in the connection. A tear slipped down his face, and she swallowed hard, the pain in her chest growing. "I'm not ready to give up on us," she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. He opened his eyes then, the intensity of his gaze making her heart leap and her nerves tingle. She saw something shift within him, a crack in the wall of determination he had built. "Alara, let's stay together," she blurted out before she lost her nerve. "We can figure out a way." A silence fell between them, heavy with the weight of unspoken fears and impossible hopes. Then, slowly, almost painfully, a smile began to form at the corners of his mouth. It was tentative at first, then grew, until it transformed into a beautiful, heartbreaking expression that spoke volumes more than any words ever could. "Alara," he murmured, his voice rough with emotion, "you have no idea how much I want to believe this." Her heart clenched at the raw vulnerability in his voice, and she stepped even closer, her hands reaching up to cup his face. "Well, figure it out," she promised softly, her thumbs brushing over his cheekbones, tracing the hollows beneath. For a moment, they simply stood there, letting the intensity of their feelings consume them. Then, with a surge of determination and newfound hope, she lifted herself onto her tiptoes, pressing her lips gently to his. It was a soft, tender kiss, a promise wrapped in longing. When they pulled away, his eyes shone with an unspoken understanding. "I'll take you as far as I can," he vowed. She nodded, her heart swelling with gratitude and love. "And I'll stay by your side through every step." There was no need for more words. Their gazes held 1,000 promises, a future brimming with uncertainty, but also hope. With a final, lingering look at each other, they stepped back into the unknown together. The final line of their story was simple yet profoundly powerful, each word resonating with the weight of their choices and the promise of their uncertain journey ahead. They were in it together. They were in it together. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow across the horizon, Lily and Marco found themselves wandering through the bustling streets of the city, their minds still reeling from the unexpected turn of events at the abandoned warehouse. Each step they took was a silent testament to their bond, a shared commitment that neither could shake off despite the dangers lurking around every corner. Marco's eyes remained vigilant, constantly scanning their surroundings for any sign of trouble. His knuckles were white from gripping the handle of his backpack, which contained a variety of tools and weapons, each item carefully chosen in case they needed to defend themselves against the unknown threats that seemed to be close in on them. Lily, meanwhile, felt a mixture of fear and determination coursing through her veins. Her heart pounded against her chest, but she refused to let it show. She had to stay strong for both of them. "I can't believe this is happening," she murmured, breaking the silence that had settled between them. "It feels like we've been living in a dream world." Marco glanced at her, his expression softening as he realized the weight of their situation was beginning to overwhelm her. "We're not in a dream, Lily. This is real, but it's not over yet. We still have a chance to figure this out and get answers." "Do you really think we can trust anyone?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," Marco admitted, stopping in his tracks and turning to face her fully. "But I do know that there are good people out there, and we have to find them before it's too late." Lily nodded, her eyes tracing over the familiar landmarks of the city as they moved closer to the old university district. The building was still there, its towering structure casting long shadows in the fading light. She remembered the many hours she had spent studying there, poring over ancient texts and historical documents. It felt surreal now, knowing that she might have to revisit those same records to uncover something crucial about their current predicament. As they approached the university gates, Marco's phone buzzed in his pocket. They both jumped at the unexpected sound, but quickly calmed down once he identified the caller as Alex, an old friend who had been researching the unusual occurrences in the city. Marco answered the call, keeping his voice low and cautious as he listened to Alex's update. Moments later, he ended the call and turned to Lily. "We have a lead," he said, determination etched onto his face. "Alex has found something that might explain everything." Lily's eyes widened with hope. "What is it?" Marco hesitated for a moment before continuing. "He says there's an ancient manuscript hidden somewhere in the university library. It supposedly contains information about strange phenomena and how to control them. We need to get inside and find it." "I'm ready," Lily declared, her resolve strengthening with each passing second. "Let's go." Together, they slipped through the university gates, careful to avoid drawing attention to themselves as they made their way towards the library. The building loomed ahead of them like a guardian of knowledge, its doors ajar in invitation. They entered cautiously, aware that every step could be a trigger for an unexpected encounter or trap. Inside the dimly lit halls, the air was heavy with the scent of old books and dusty parchment. Shelves lined the walls, packed with volumes from centuries past, their pages yellowed and fragile. Marco led the way, his movements swift and sure as he navigated the maze of corridors that stretched out before them. They reached the main hall of the library, where vast windows allowed the last rays of sunlight to pour in, illuminating the towering bookcases that towered above them. Marco stopped at a particular shelf, glancing up at its contents before reaching for a specific volume. As his fingers brushed against the leather spine, the book seemed to pulse with energy, as though responding to his touch. He handed the book to Lily, and she felt a surge of warmth spread through her as she opened it. The pages were filled with intricate diagrams and strange symbols, each one telling a story that connected the dots between what they had seen and experienced. It was more than just an explanation, it was a roadmap to the truth. Lily's eyes traced over the words, feeling as though she could almost hear whispers of the past. "This is it," she breathed, her voice barely audible. "We have to find the manuscript Alex mentioned." Marco nodded, his gaze sharp and focused. "Let's start here," he said, indicating a set of stairs that led down to the basement levels of the library. Below them, a new world awaited, where secrets lay hidden in the shadows, waiting for brave souls to uncover them. As they descended into the darkness, Lily felt a sense of awe mixed with unease. The journey ahead was perilous and fraught with danger, but it was also filled with purpose and hope. With each step they took, they solidified their bond further. They were in this together, and together they would find the answers they sought or face whatever lay in wait.